Donald Trump and the Republicans are in so much more trouble than I thought. And I'm not even talking about yesterday's special election for Louisiana House District Seat 60, where Chastity Martinez, the Democrat, absolutely cleaned up. She got 62% of the vote. This is a district that went heavily for Donald Trump in all three of the last presidential elections. I mean, I know in the last year we've seen in the general election and special elections, Republicans getting their asses handed to them over and over again because what Donald Trump is doing is incredibly unpopular. And Republicans have decided they will do whatever Daddy Donald wants. They have bent the knee fully. They are full on collaborators with Donald Trump's agenda, and the American voter doesn't like it. Republicans on their own, entirely unforced error, have destroyed the brand of their party. They've allowed their brand to become all about the cult of Donald Trump and the fascist agenda of Project 2025 and Stephen Miller, and they will never come back from that. They will never come back from that. In this run-up to the midterms, Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and Steve Bannon are desperate to subvert the elections. They're desperate to undermine free and fair elections because they know that Republicans are absolutely fucked. And we're all really clear now that they will do anything and everything to hold on to power. They are cheating brazenly in the open. It's up to us. It's up to us to make sure that we have massive voter turnout. And yesterday's election with Chastity Martinez shows that voting does still work. If we show up and we vote, we win. But then there's this whole other element to it, which is where the Republicans are very likely, Donald Trump especially very likely, they're going to try and prevent duly elected representatives from being sworn in and seated. That's a pretty classic authoritarian move, and I would be surprised if they don't try it. Because this is the extinction burst of their attempt at an auto coup. They are pulling out all of the stops because if they lose in the midterms, it's over for them. The fascist takeover of the United States is over for them. So the level of panic and desperation coming out of the regime is just going to continue to escalate. And it's more important than ever that we organize and we prepare. We prepare to be able to defend the results of the election after we all show up and vote. We have to make sure that the votes are counted and that the folks who win are sworn in and seated, that there is a transfer of power. And it's not just Donald Trump and Mike Johnson who seem like they're undermining that process. There's a lot of Republicans who are undermining that process. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about the will of the people. They want to hold on to power at any cost. That can feel really scary because they're running the government, right? It can feel like, well, if they want to hold on to power, they're going to be able to break all of the laws and do all of the terrible things, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. That's not true. Elections are a part of the way that we stop this. They're not everything, but it is the collective power of the American people that is so much stronger than a fragile dictator like Donald Trump. We, the people, coming together not only to exercise our power at the ballot box, but then exercise our power in collective action, mass mobilization of all of us so that we can defend the election results. We know from studying other nonviolent resistance movements, Chile, Serbia, that this is an inflection point. This is the path for us out of this nightmare and starting to get to a place where we have accountability, we have justice, we have reforms. Or it's a place where we choose not to exercise our power, and the fascists, they will just hold on for dear life. They're not going to go peacefully. And there's new polling out today that shows just how bad of a position it is for Donald Trump and the Republicans. When I say that autocrats are very weak and the people have the power, I mean it. The people have the power. Rulers only rule with the consent of the governed. People like to compare Donald Trump to Hitler. The thing is, y'all, is that Hitler was really, really popular for quite a while. Donald Trump has never been popular. He's never had a majority of Americans supporting him, ever. He's never even had a majority of the voters, much less of the American people in support of him, and he becomes increasingly unpopular. The more terrible things he does, the more he pisses people off, including his base. Okay, sorry to bury the lead there a little bit. I do love me a long intro and lots of context. So this new polling today out from CNN shows that basically the base has dropped out from MAGA. The core of his most loyal supporters, the folks who got him elected, he no longer has those folks in his pocket.
Yeah, okay. So if you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he built his two presidential victories on winning voters without a college degree, while Donald Trump's base with non-college voters is absolutely collapsing. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just take a look? Voters without a college degree on Donald Trump. Look at this. Back in 2024, he won those voters over Kamala Harris by 14 points. You come over to this side of the screen. What's his net approval rating with him? He is underwater by 9 points. That's a 23-point switcheroo with his base of non-college voters. He is absolutely collapsing with the group of voters that helped put him into the White House, Kate.
Donald Trump has long bragged that he loves the uneducated, but those with less education appear to no longer love him back. Remember when I said that Republicans have essentially fucked their own brand? They have made Republicans synonymous with MAGA. They have made Republican synonymous with the cult of Trump, and everything that Donald Trump does, they are now inextricably linked.
How are these non-college voters feeling about 2026?
Okay, so you see this drop of 23 points, right? From plus 14 Trump to now he's underwater by 9 points. How is that impacting their views on how they're going to vote for Congress? Well, you see a similar story going on here, right? Take a look. In the 2024 election, Republicans won those voters, those non-college voters, by 13 points. Now they're just ahead by just 1, 2, 3, 4 points. When you can count it on one hand, you know that you're in trouble if you're Donald John Trump and the Republican Party, in this case, the Republican Party, when it comes to the voters in Congress. And of course, a 4-point lead among non-college voters is not anywhere close to being good enough because Democrats are dominating among voters with a college degree, up by 20 points. At this point, the Democratic base with college voters is rising, and the Republican base with non-college voters is collapsing.
So Trump didn't just obliterate the support from a key block of voters for himself, he also did it to Republicans. I know it can feel like people aren't leaving the cult of MAGA because you're not seeing it in a really public way, but it's showing up in the polls. People leave for their own individual reasons, and they tend to leave quietly. They don't make a big announcement. There's no big public flounce for most people when they leave a cult of MAGA or they change political parties, especially if they are in a part of the country that's still deeply red, right? They're not going to shout it from the rooftops that they are no longer loyal to the movement, especially if their neighbors and folks in their church are. You end up with people who are no longer loyal, are not going to vote for Donald Trump and the Republicans, but they're not suddenly piercing their nose and dyeing their hair blue. In particular, when it comes to non-college educated blue-collar workers, Donald Trump made all kinds of promises to them. He told folks in West Virginia he was going to bring back coal mining. He was never going to do that. He took away a ton of Biden infrastructure money that went overwhelmingly to blue-collar workers. But he said he was going to bring back manufacturing in the United States. His tariffs were going to do it, even though there was no plan to actually build more factories or hire more workers or revitalize these industries at all. It was always all smoke and mirrors, and tariffs were always a tax that was levied on us. We, the American consumer, pay tariffs. Donald Trump's nonsensical, chaotic, stochastic tariff plan has only hurt American employers and American workers and our bank accounts.
Okay, one of the reasons why Donald Trump has been able to bring non-college voters into the Republican ranks is because he said, hey, I'm going to bring back those jobs, those manufacturing jobs that were lost to free trade, right? Bring in those tariffs, restrict those jobs from moving overseas. But there's just a bit of a problem going on here. How about those manufacturing jobs? In December of 2025, compared to the beginning of the Donald Trump presidency, the manufacturing jobs have gone adios amigos. See you later. They've been going away, down 63,000 versus January of 2025, with an even larger collapse since Liberation Day, right? So what we're dealing with is a Donald Trump message that is not actually meeting the reality, and that is why non-college voters have been going away from the President of the United States and away from Republicans as well.
And he has not brought back manufacturing jobs because he never cared about doing that at all. He only cared about fleecing all of us. And blue-collar workers are realizing there is no war but the class war. They're realizing a billionaire never had their best interest at heart at all. Democrats shouldn't rest on their laurels. We need a country that works for working class people. We need to tax the rich. We need to end Citizens United. We need universal health care. We need worker protections, environmental protections. We need elected officials who are going to make America work for working class people, who will get us the justice and reforms that we need. But whatever loyalty these folks had to Donald Trump and MAGA and the Republicans, it's gone poof, and I don't think that they can recover it. It's going to be a bad scene for Republicans in the midterms.